Muscle loss doesn't start with weakness. It starts with silence. It starts with the slow disappearance of things we once took for granted. The strength to carry groceries, the ease of standing up from the sofa, the quiet confidence of walking without holding on to anything. You don't feel it at first. It's not an ache, it's not a fall. It's the moment you hesitate before bending down, the moment you ask someone else to open the jar, the moment the stairs seem taller than they did last year. And you tell yourself it's normal, that it's age, that it's just how things go. But is it? There's a Japanese doctor who lived to 105. His name was Shigeaki Hinohara. He wasn't famous for pills or surgeries. He was famous because even in his 90s he climbed stairs every day, because he believed in movement, not just as exercise, but as life, as proof that we still belong to this world. He used to say, "Keep your body in motion. It's cheaper than any pill." And he was right. In the end, it's not the medicine cabinet that decides our future. It's the little choices, the daily rituals, the belief that motion still matters, even when the world tells us to slow down. Another voice, from a very different corner of the world, says something similar. Dr. Peter Attia, a doctor of modern science and longevity, reminds us of something we rarely hear, that muscle is the organ of longevity. That muscle isn't just about lifting things or standing tall. It's about blood sugar, immunity, balance, energy. It's about the ability to catch ourselves when we stumble, to digest our food properly, to keep the mind alert through the body's strength. And when muscle disappears, it's not just strength that fades. It's independence, it's clarity, it's freedom. But what if muscle loss doesn't come from laziness or aging? What if the real cause isn't lack of effort, but invisible choices made each day? What if the hours we spend sitting, the meals that lack nourishment, the thoughts we repeat in our minds, are slowly stealing the very foundation of our health? In today's story, we won't talk about aging as a decline. We'll talk about it as a landscape that still holds paths forward. We'll uncover, gently and clearly, what really causes muscle loss after 60, and how to begin reclaiming strength. Not with noise, not with perfection, but with quiet, consistent care. Starting now. It often begins with good intentions. You tell yourself you're going to rest just for a moment. You sit down after breakfast, then again after lunch. You turn on the television or scroll through the phone. Before you know it, an hour passes. Then 2. The legs are still, the hips remain folded. The back settles into the chair like it belongs there. And because there's no pain, not yet, you assume nothing is wrong. But something quiet is happening beneath the surface. Muscles that aren't used begin to soften. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but gently day by day they surrender their strength. There's a widespread belief among older adults that unless you're bedridden, you're doing fine. That just walking around the house or going to the market once a week is enough. But the body works differently after 60. It responds differently to stillness. Studies have shown that after just 1 hour of sitting, muscle protein synthesis, the process your body uses to maintain and repair muscle, slows down. And where does it slow first? The legs, the glutes, the very muscles that keep you standing, climbing, walking, and balanced. In older adults, this effect is even sharper. Our cells become less responsive to the cues of movement, which means that long stretches of sitting are no longer neutral. They're harmful. The muscles interpret the silence as a signal. We're not needed anymore. And so, quietly, they begin to shrink. But here's something hopeful. In a study of older adults, those who simply stood up and moved for a few minutes every 30 to 60 minutes, nothing fancy, just a stretch or a short walk, had better muscle tone. They also had improved insulin sensitivity, which protects against diabetes, fatigue, and brain fog. These people weren't going to the gym. They weren't jogging. They were just interrupting the stillness. That's all. They were sending a signal to the body. We're still alive. Stay strong. There are ways to remember this without technology or alarms. Use the moments you already live through. When the phone rings, stand. When a commercial plays, take a few steps. When the kettle whistles or a bird lands on the windowsill, stretch your calves. The point isn't intensity, it's consistency. It's the simple truth that stillness, when uninterrupted, becomes weakness. But movement, even small, even soft, awakens what's been sleeping. Your muscles don't disappear all at once. They shrink with every hour you don't notice passing, but they can also return, slowly, with dignity, with attention. With each step, you still have the power to take. There's a quiet habit that many carry without knowing it. It comes from years of repetition, modesty, or caution. A breakfast of toast and tea, a light lunch of rice and vegetables, a bowl of soup at night. It feels gentle, familiar, but something is missing. Something your muscles depend on more than ever after 60. Protein. For many older adults, protein is unintentionally forgotten. Some avoid it out of fear of weight gain, or old warnings about cholesterol that no longer apply. Others believe they're eating enough simply because they don't feel hungry, or because heavy meals seem harder to digest. But what science shows, and what tradition also knew in quiet ways, is that as we age, we actually need more protein, not less. Not for vanity, not to build large muscles, but to keep the ones we already have from melting away. The body becomes less efficient at using protein with time. It's like trying to fill a cup with a slow faucet. You need more to get the same result. Muscles are not just made. They are constantly repaired, refreshed, rebuilt. And without enough protein, that repair slows. The body begins to draw from its own reserves, especially in the legs, hips, and arms, to keep itself running. Over months, over years, strength fades. Not with noise, but with quiet erosion. There is a simple rhythm that can change everything. It begins with the morning. Within the first 90 minutes after waking, the body is most ready to absorb protein and use it to protect your lean mass. A breakfast with 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein, whether from eggs, yogurt, lentils, or a bit of fish, tells your muscles, you are still needed. This isn't just theory. In Okinawa, where some of the world's longest-living elders reside, the first meal often includes fish broth, tofu, or fermented soy. These aren't heavy meals. They're gentle, warming, and rich in the building blocks that keep the body from crumbling. Think of protein like the bricks of a house. Even the strongest walls weaken when the deliveries stop. At first, there's no collapse. But one day, when the storm comes, you find yourself exposed. You try to rise, and something fails. Not because the will wasn't there, but because the materials had been quietly missing day after day. There is still time to nourish those walls, to bring back what the body needs to stand firm, to carry your weight, to keep you steady. Not with extremes, not with supplements and shiny boxes, but with food that feeds the bones, the tissue, the strength that remembers how to return. There's a sentence that many speak without noticing. It slips out softly, like a sigh, like something that's just true. The sentence is, I'm too old for that. It may come after bending down, or when someone suggests a walk, or a dance, or a small challenge. It might even be said with a smile. But inside the body, that sentence becomes something heavier than it seems. It becomes a message the muscles hear loud and clear. Stop trying. This mindset, quiet, polite, almost invisible, is one of the most underestimated forces in aging. Because the moment we stop asking our body for strength, it stops offering it. Not out of punishment, but out of adaptation. The body is loyal. It listens. If you say you no longer need power, speed, balance, it begins to withdraw them gently to save energy. And what follows is what many feel in silence: stiffness, imbalance, fatigue, hesitation. Neuroscience confirms what ancestral wisdom already hinted at, that beliefs shape biology. Thoughts are not just clouds passing through the mind, they're signals to the nervous system. When someone believes they are too old to move, their brain activates fewer muscle fibers, literally pulls back as if to say, let's not risk this. The fear of falling becomes the reason we become more likely to fall. The avoidance of effort becomes the seed of weakness. But what if the question changed? What if instead of asking, can I still do this? We asked, what's my version of this now? Because aging doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing it differently. Maybe slower, maybe with support, maybe with more awareness, but still doing, still living, still reaching. This shift is not just about exercise. It's about the spirit of movement. A walk to see the flowers blooming, turning on music and letting the hands sway, watering the plants not with duty but with rhythm. In these moments, muscles awaken without the burden of work. They remember their purpose: to carry, to create, to express. There's power in joy. When movement is tied to joy, rather than fear or obligation, the body responds. Not all at once, but like a garden that begins to bloom after long rains. You don't need to force it. You need only to believe again that strength is not behind you. It is still within you, waiting for a reason to rise. The moment you stop asking your body for strength, it stops offering it. But the moment you speak to it with hope, with curiosity, with care, it begins to answer again. It may take time, but it listens. It always listens. It's a quiet kind of surrender. The belief that if you can't do a full workout, it's better to do nothing at all. Many carry this thought without questioning it. Maybe the gym feels distant. Maybe the joints ache just thinking about kneeling or lifting. Maybe time slips away between appointments, meals, or simply the need for rest. And so, the body waits. And with each passing day, the waiting becomes heavier than the act of movement itself. But strength was never built in hours. Not truly. It was built in daily rhythms, the kind our grandparents lived without thinking. Fetching water, sweeping, kneading bread, rising with the sun. Motion was woven into life, not separated into sessions or routines. And this wisdom still applies, because even now, even in a body that has seen decades, a few sacred minutes can preserve the foundation of mobility. Clinical studies now confirm what the elders already practiced, that short, simple movements, when done consistently, protect function. Just 3 to 4 minutes a day of slow, intentional motion, not to impress, not to sweat, but to awaken. Squats using only your own weight, pushes against a wall, lifting your heels while holding onto the edge of the table. Each action, small, but each one reminding your muscles that they still have a job. These are called exercise snacks, a curious term, but one that holds truth. Small portions, easy to digest, but powerful when repeated. They improve oxygenation. They preserve the strength to climb stairs. They reduce the risk of falls. They keep the connection alive between mind and muscle, a connection many don't even realize is fading until it's gone. The beauty is in the ritual. This isn't about adding something overwhelming. It's about tying it to something you already do. While the water boils for tea, while brushing your teeth, while standing in the morning sunlight, you don't need equipment. You don't need perfection. You only need to claim a few minutes each day as yours. Just a few sacred minutes that belong to your body. And in those minutes, something gentle happens. Not just physically, but emotionally. A return, a remembrance, a quiet affirmation that you are still here and still capable of strength. The world may have rushed ahead and time may have carved lines into your hands, but the body you live in still responds to care. It always has. You don't need a gym to keep your strength. Just a ritual. Just a whisper of movement. Just enough to remind your body that it still matters. And that in itself is enough to begin again. There comes a time in life when the losses begin to stack quietly. Not always in the loud ways, not in funerals or farewells, but in the small, private moments, when you no longer kneel to pick something up because getting up feels too uncertain, when you choose the elevator over the stairs, even if there are only a few steps, when the armchair feels heavier to rise from, even though it never used to. And with each of these small decisions, something in us adjusts. We begin to move a little less, trust our legs a little less, expect a little less from the body that once carried children, danced at weddings, tended gardens, walked home under the stars. But here is what the world rarely says out loud, that the decline of muscle is not just about strength. It's about memory, confidence, identity, the ability to hold ourselves with presence and purpose. When muscles fade, it becomes harder to trust your step, harder to carry your own groceries, harder to lift the pan off the stove, harder to feel safe walking into a room without holding onto the wall. And these aren't just physical challenges, they are emotional ones. Because when you begin to doubt your body, you begin to doubt your independence. There is a kind of grief that lives in that doubt, a grief for the body that once was, for the mornings that began with energy, For the times you got up from the floor without a second thought. It's not vanity. It's not about youth. It's about presence, dignity. Not having to ask for help when you want to stand. Not feeling like you're fading from the edges of your own life. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara understood this. Into his 90s, he refused to let stillness define his days. He climbed stairs, not because he had something to prove, but because he knew what each step meant. A signal to the body, you are still needed. A whisper to the muscles, stay with me a little longer. That kind of movement isn't about fitness. It's about holding on to the sacred rhythm of life, one step at a time. Dr. Peter Attia, who has studied the science of aging with great care, speaks of muscle as the true organ of longevity. It's not just tissue, it's a protector. It regulates blood sugar, supports metabolism, strengthens the immune system. It stabilizes us when we lose balance. It helps us avoid illness. It allows us to lift ourselves, literally and emotionally, when the world becomes heavy. It doesn't scream for attention, but without it, everything else begins to collapse. And yet, muscle doesn't vanish overnight. It's not like hair falling or teeth aching. It fades quietly, like colors left too long in the sun. Through stillness, through meals lacking protein, through thoughts that whisper, I can't anymore. It slips away. But here's the truth no one talks about. If you can lose it slowly, you can rebuild it gently. Strength doesn't belong only to the young. It belongs to anyone who still has breath and a will to keep walking, even if it's with help. We've been taught to look at health through the lens of medicine, of pills, diagnoses, blood pressure numbers. But the real foundation of aging lies in things that don't require a prescription. Standing a little more, eating enough protein to support the body's repair, moving not with intensity, but with respect, questioning the belief that it's too late. It's not too late. It is never too late. You don't need to chase transformation. What you need is attention. To give your body the same devotion you gave your family, your work, your loved ones for years. A few minutes in the morning, a little protein with breakfast, a quiet stretch after sitting, not as punishment, not as chore, but as a reminder, I am still here. It's not the clock that defines aging. It's how we respond to the hours, whether we fill them with stillness or small acts of care, whether we accept decline as destiny or choose to remain present in the body we still have, even if the knees ache, even if balance is uncertain, even if you move slowly, it matters. Every movement says, I want to stay with myself. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not finished. The muscles that have carried you through life, through births and farewells, through storms and spring mornings, are still listening. They have not forgotten how to answer when called upon. You don't need to fight age. Age will come, yes, but what matters is how you meet it. With strength, with nourishment, with kindness toward the body that has done so much for you already. Muscle is not just a part of you. It is the memory of every step you've taken. And it can still carry you forward. One step, one moment, one breath at a time.